Alright guys, how's it going? It's the Eastbayanglers. Today I want to talk about rainbow trout fishing. I want to talk about trout fishing at Shadow Cliffs, located in Pleasanton, California. We're going to talk today about everything you're going to need to know the next time you go out. If you decide to go out to Shadow Cliffs, whether you've been there before or not, this is kind of basically break down just about everything you're going to need to know. So let's get started. Let's go ahead and start off with getting a permit. Now you're going to arrive early. A lot of days it's going to be difficult to get a spot. You're going to want to get to the spot as quick as you can. There is a manual pay-as-you-go. It's like a small box, and that's going to be where you can pay for your permit if you get there early. Usually this machine does take larger bills, but if it doesn't have change, you're not going to get the difference. So I'd go there with $1 bills. This is kind of important because this is going to allow you to get to a lot of spots before they're already taken by other anglers. At the booth, and that's generally going to open between 7 a.m. There's a couple days I think it's 6:30 a.m. but most days generally it's 7 a.m. sharp. You can get into there, but there's sometimes a line, and by the time that line of cars comes through, you've already lost the opportunity to get to your fishing spot. So keep that in mind. That's kind of, in my opinion, important. Being able to get the spot or get right next to your spot is the difference. A lot of times it's a head game. You can park your vehicle at McDonald's or in that parking lot in that vicinity and go ahead and walk to the lake, and that'll get you in there, since the parking doesn't actually open till 7 a.m. That's going to go ahead and get you in there, since the kiosk booth or the booth does not open till about 7 a.m. You can park your vehicle at McDonald's or in that parking lot in that vicinity and go ahead and walk to the lake, and that'll get you in there, since the parking doesn't actually open till 7 a.m. That's going to go ahead and get you in there, since the kiosk booth or the booth does not open till about 7 a.m. Alright guys, let's talk about my favorite spot when fishing at Shadow Cliffs for rainbow trout. I'm a big believer that being in the right spot, eventually you're going to catch fish. Being in the right spot matters. My favorite spot when I'm rainbow trout fishing at Shadow Cliffs is the first dock to the right of the planting tube. I've seen that dock produce big fish as well as limit after limit after limit. It's a consistent bite. These planted fish are really predictable. Now usually what I like to do is cast out shallower earlier in the morning, and as the sun soon comes up, as the day goes along, start casting out a bit further. Start getting into that deeper water, because those trout will come up early in the morning and they will be shallow, and then they're going to go deeper as that sun comes out and warms up that water. Now my favorite baits in general when I'm fishing at Shadow Cliffs for rainbow trout have to be green pumpkin, garlic, rainbow power bait, spring green power bait, and chartreuse green power bait. I'm also a big fan of fishing lures at Shadow Cliffs. Some of my favorite lures, in my opinion, the better lures to use right after a plan, or even just in general, would be a silver Castmaster, a silver blue fox, inline spinner, little Cleos in orange. And now usually what I like to do is cast out shallower earlier in the morning, and as the sun soon comes up, as the day goes along, start casting out a bit further. Start getting into that deeper water, because those trout will come up early in the morning and they will be shallow, and then they're going to go deeper as that sun comes out and warms up that water. Now, my favorite baits in general when I'm fishing at Shadow Cliffs for rainbow trout have to be green pumpkin, garlic, rainbow power bait, spring green power bait, and chartreuse green power bait. I'm also a big fan of fishing lures at Shadow Cliffs. Some of my favorite lures, in my opinion, the better lures to use right after a plant, or even just in general, would be a silver Castmaster, a silver blue fox, inline spinner, little Cleos in orange. And I'm going to really stick with those 1/4 ounce to 1 ounce baits. I know you're thinking, whoa, 1 ounce, that's a big Castmaster or an inline spinner. But if you change out that treble hook to a smaller treble hook, go a couple sizes down, you're going to be amazingly surprised at how much flash that puts off, and that those trout really don't care that spoon is larger. They're just following that flash. They do strike it, they do hit it hard, and they do I can't tell you enough good things about, the larger 1 ounce Castmasters and all silver chrome. Big fish. That particular lure can be deadly. It gets down deeper and you can cast it out further. Really gives you a huge advantage on the bank. As far as retrieve speeds, you just want to get it fast enough to where it's moving and you can feel it working. Other than that, you might give it a twitch now and then. And let's talk about rods real quick. You just need a 7 to 8 foot medium action rod. That's all you need, nothing more. Simple. As far as a reel goes, does not matter. It really doesn't. As long as the drag is decent and you can play a bigger fish, you're good to go. As far as line goes, I can't stress enough how important line is. P-line, CXX, monofilament fishing line. This is light moss green color. It's exceptional. It's strong. It's abrasion resistant. It's just about everything you need. It's got a little bit of stretch, and it floats, most importantly, which we'll get to later. But having your bait float is very important when you're trout fishing. Whether you're using power bait, power eggs, mice tails, anything like that, if you're bait fishing on the bottom, you need to make sure that your rig is floating. So let's go ahead and talk about something I'm kind of reluctant to use at most lakes, but when I'm fishing Shadow Cliffs, I tend to generally throw out short leaders as short as 6 inches. I don't know why, but I've had really good luck on shorter leaders at Shadow Cliffs, right off that dock and off a few other spots. But that dock, man, I mean, I've seen some days where try to time your fishing trips right after a plant. 24 hours to 72 hours is prime time after a plant. Those fish are ready to eat. Generally, right as they put them in, you're going to be able to catch them with lures. It's going to be more or less. But after those fish settle down, the night after, but after those fish settle down, the morning after, the day after, the night after, those fish are going to be really active. They're going to be feeding for the first. So we're going to talk about trout fishing, time of year that you're going to want to go trout fishing at Shadow Cliffs. And I'm going to say it's December, from the first week of December all the way to the last week of February. I mean, that is some really prime time action That is when you're going to have your best chance at, catching your personal best trout. That's when the Lassen throws in the big boys. It's really... Alright guys, so go ahead, like I was talking about, it's important to find out when they're putting these fish in, when they're planning. Go ahead and call there and go ahead and ask the kiosk booth. Alright guys, go ahead and call there, or you can check the Angler's Edge online, and that's going to go ahead and give you upcoming plants at all the different East Bay Regional Park lakes, I believe. We're talking about keeping that bait floating, okay? This is really important. Alright guys, so just remember, like I was talking about earlier, always as soon as you rig up, you need to double check, make sure your bait's going to float, make sure that that hook doesn't weigh down that bait, that power bait or the power eggs, whatever it is, the mice tail you're fishing. So I generally tend to stick with a size 14 treble if I'm fishing for trout, and a size 8 single hook. Those are two really good size hooks for you to go ahead and fish with. It's going to make the bait float a lot easier, a lot better. That's pretty important. A lot of times if you're fishing with power bait and the trout bite it, but they're, kind of nibbling some of it off, sometimes it'll sink down to the bottom. It won't continue to float. So keep all this in mind. There are two kinds of fish plants. Now, those fish plants are going to be Mount Lassen trout, and they're going to be Department of Fish and Game trout, or Department of Fish and Wildlife, as they want to call themselves now. Choosing the right color power bait, power egg, mice tail color, that really makes all the difference. This can't be stressed enough, guys. Play around with different baits. Remember, the first 72 hours after a plant, that's your best shot at catching a limit. They put in some monster-sized trout at Shadow Cliffs, so I adjust my drag accordingly. I generally have it tight, set the hook, and adjust it right away a bit more loose, and play that fish, because you just never know. Sometimes these fish, you might be fighting it for a few, 10, 15 seconds. It doesn't feel that big, and as soon as that fish comes up and it sees you or you see it, it just makes a run for it. And if your drag's not set right, you're really in a bad spot. So keep that in mind. That is very important. I want to talk about having your permit and having your stuff that you're going to having your fishing license. The lake is patrolled by law enforcement pretty regularly, and they're going to check and ask for those permits and licenses. So keep them ready to go. On a side note, alcohol is not allowed at this lake. A little unique about Shadow Cliffs is I've seen fishing to be really good, not just in the morning, but in the afternoon, throughout the day, and even later in the evening, which is surprising because most of the time a lake can shut down right in that midday area, right in that. Something you might want to consider, something I do a lot when I fish Shadow Cliffs, is I use up to 3 separate leaders and hooks per rod. So I've got my main line, and I've got a pre-tied leader that allows me to have 3 different rigs, 3 different bait setups, and then I can find out what bait they're going for quicker, and I can also find out the best leader length. Usually these trout like to feed at a certain these trout can be really finicky, and I've experienced leader length makes all the difference. Having a 6 or inch leader or a 36-inch leader, sometimes if you don't have what they want, they don't bite it. It doesn't really add up, but that's what I've experienced. That's what I've actually seen. I've fished for trout in other places where you could actually see the trout and they would not take the bait. And when I adjusted my leader length, these trout all of a sudden were more than happy to take the bait, and not just one, but quite a few. So that was an interesting experience, and this is just going to allow you to fish more baits, as well as really play with those leaders, figure out what those fish want. So Guys, we hope this video helps you catch more fish the next time you're out fishing for rainbow trout at Shadow Cliffs.
Let's go. Yeah. I'm like an addict, ooh, I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it. Fuse like a magnet, lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shit tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last.